Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are doing the Steam fall list cleanup for the spring cleaning, or inspired by spring cleaning. Today we're going through games starting with the letter O, so this might be a particularly short one. We're looking for games that are on my fall list. Games get on the fall list because I look at every new game that comes out on Steam every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as when I'm also playing Hearthstone and talking about video game news. If a game looks good enough, but I'm not certain, which is most games, I'll put it on the fall list, wait about 6 months, and then see if it's gotten at least 20 verified purchase reviews, that's what this number is, to put it in a positive category of some sort. Now, whether it says positive, mostly positive, very positively, doesn't really matter. That's kind of Steam's own interpreted system that is too complicated to even make any sense out of. It has more to do with the number of reviews than the percentage of positive reviews. Here you can see this is 76% positive and it's mostly positive. If it had only 21 reviews and they were 76% positive, it would just say positive. Or we'll be looking at games that have already met that threshold but haven't been out for 6 months, or we'll be looking at games that came out more than 6 months ago. So as of this recording, we're using January 1st, 2019 as the cutoff date, but they didn't get any reviews, or enough reviews. If a game doesn't have at least 20 verified purchase reviews, it probably doesn't have any relevancy, so it would have to have a unique reason for me to want to put it on the wish list. The wish list needs to stay a very highly curated list because I ask people to support my channel by friending me on Steam and gifting me games off the wish list. Last thing I want to have happen is somebody gift me a game that is just total garbage and then I have to honestly say it's not that good, because that would hurt people's feelings and it would be a waste of my time also. So the first game we're looking at is Octopath Traveler, but actually we're not really looking at it because this game, in the time since I've opened all of the tabs on the follow list, which was about a week ago, this game has come out and been marked as mostly positive. There is only really one caveat for this Square Enix JRPG, and that is that it has de nouveau in it, and that might be a problem. The price might be a little high too, and I could certainly see the argument that Octopath Traveler, at least at the moment, since there's not really an Octopath Traveler 2 that I've heard anything about, it's not a series, so if I'm only going to play the top 10 RPGs or JRPGs out there, because they're very long games, I don't know how I choose to play Octopath Traveler over Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy or any number of other games. There's 15 Final Fantasy games out there that are numbered, and there's way more than even that. So if I was just trying to cover the entirety of Final Fantasy, that would be a ridiculous amount of gameplay. That being said, this game also has a unique selling point in that it is using a slightly different art style. I think maybe people are a little overzealous in the praise of this art style. It's really just a slightly more polished RPG Maker pixelated character art style in a fantasy world that has the benefit of being polished and programmed by a large developer and publisher in Square Enix, and thus the flat 2D images of the characters are used almost like cardboard cutouts in a 3D environment. What you won't really see from this is a lot of copycats trying to do this. You'll see some, but not a lot, because RPG Maker MV, the newest version of RPG Maker, probably does not support the lighting and the effects that this engine, which is, I'm sure, a proprietary engine, uses. That being said, this very much still just looks like a Super NES game with more polish. But that unique art style also would make me want to put this on the wish list. I would say I like the art style on this thumbnail way more than I like the art style in the actual game. You don't really get any cutscenes as far as I can tell, or very many cutscenes in which you get to see this. And there's a gameplay mechanic in Octopath Traveler. There's 7 strangers that you can pick as any of the strangers and play that person's path first. In the end, I don't think it really matters who you pick. I think you end up at the same place at the end regardless. It's an 81 on Metacritic. We'll be looking at games for some red flags. Price could be a red flag. De Novo might be a red flag, but I'm not really going to turn away a game just because it has De Novo. Third-party accounts or third-party end-user license agreements aren't going to scare me away, but I might take note of them. If the language support is lacking, or if the language support in some rare cases is supporting English and Chinese only, or English and Russian only, I've seen some bad games on Steam quite a lot that seem to be targeted to the Russian market or the Chinese market, and they tend to be extremely low effort games. That being said, almost no low effort games should be on the fall list in the first place. Full audio here for an RPG actually sounds like a nice move, but I bet that doesn't mean that you're going to spend hours and hours and hours hearing the characters talk. I guess maybe it being a teen game might have some appeal for being YouTube friendly. And in other situations, if we were still questioning it, I might go to the negative reviews and see if there's something here that would convince me to not really play it. Let's see. Here you have someone who hates the visual effects, the Unreal Engine. I guess this is Unreal Engine, yeah. So it's not a proprietary engine. It's weird to make an RPG in Unreal Engine, certainly. That you would almost certainly want to use Unity so it'd be easier to port to a cell phone. But like I said, this is a game that doesn't even need to be considered. It's already been elevated to the wish list. But I was afraid we may not have too many games to start off with. And yeah, we have a bunch of images that aren't loading, so I'm gonna reload the pages. It used all of my RAM to open up all the games starting with O to Z. Well, actually I opened up all the games on my file list in general, and so 1,000, maybe 2,000 tabs in Chrome were opened up, and it stopped images from loading because it was using so much RAM, and because Steam itself was telling me, look, you're downloading too many images too fast, and so they were blocking me access denied responses. Next game we have is Omen Sight Definitive Edition. There hasn't been a major usage of definitive editions as much as you might think. This came out May 15th, 2018, and for a while there was a significant amount of games that were getting remastered and then re-released with any DLC that might be available and sold usually on the PlayStation 4 when the game originally sold on the PlayStation 3, or on the Xbox One when the game originally sold on the Xbox 360. So it was a way to resell a slightly older game. In this case, the definitive edition came out May 15th, 2018, so that would be right around that time. PC doesn't really have that issue, per se. Like, if you want to put out a patch on Steam, you just patch the game. Only some of the most untrustworthy and scrupulous publishers will put out a definitive edition and make people who had already bought the game and already have the game on their Steam account buy it a second time. That has certainly happened with the Bulletstorm Definitive Edition. There was 0 discount given to people who owned Bulletstorm 1. But most Definitive Editions on Steam, if they are released, are upgrades for free, or there's a smaller fee to upgrade to HD graphics, which even at that, that's insulting, because your video games in general have been bending the knee, I guess is the phrase. They've been majorly focused on people who pre-ordered games and bought them within the first 6 months of the release window. That's really all they care about. That is their most concerned customer base. So you would think if a company is so concerned about having large numbers of pre-orders and large numbers of day one buyers, first 6 months launch window buyers of their game, they would treat those people right a couple of years down the line when you have a ability to remaster it. But definitely there have been a few companies that haven't done that. In this case, Omen Sight, though, I'm not sure if there was an Omen Sight before this on Steam. This is labeled Omen Sight, but it's been updated to Definitive Edition up here. It's $19.99. The collector's edition includes a soundtrack and an art book. It's full audio English. This has relevancy, certainly. Over the lifetime, it's had 459 user reviews that are 85% positive in the last 30 days. There's not really a big difference. If anything, people are more happy with it. This is an RPG game, but not an RPG game I would call particularly a JRPG. If anything, from the look of it, as the images, you have to kind of cycle through them once to get them to load. If anything, it looks like this is kind of more of a kid-friendly teen-style RPG. Seems like it's a lot of mouse creatures and neon colors, and I'm not a huge fan of the neon color palette, but it doesn't look too terrible here. This feels more action-based and not like a turn-based, time-based gameplay mechanic. When you see a life bar and an energy bar and several other bars, that tends to make me think it's a little bit faster paced than if you were just going to have a team of 4 take turns. There is definitely a lot here, though, that I don't know about this game. But I don't really need to know everything about the games either. I just kind of need to look for red flags, and if they don't have red flags, then this should go to the wish list. And I can pretty well tell you it is going to go to the wish list at that high review rating. $19.99 seems like a very fair price for an RPG game, even if it is a little short. Full English audio sounds good. 34 achievements. A game might be an achievement game if it has like 100 achievements and it's 99 cents, or if it has only 1 achievement, because Steam will highlight if you get 100% achievement completion. So if it has only 1 achievement that's really easy to get, then it can be an achievement game in that way also. It really would be nitpicky to look here at the negative things. Let's see. Unskippable cutscenes. A big step back from stories, a decent story but a bad game. It's kind of unfair to look at these negative reviews because it's really just Mob Rule in this case. Like, Mob Rule says 85% of people like this game. It's reasonable and believable that not everybody would like a game, and it is not my goal, even though it is my goal to clean up my follow list, it's not my goal to just find a lazy or flippant excuse to exclude every game. Stories: The Path of Destiny seems to be a game that I should consider, and then this other game, Tiny Brains, I believe is already on my wish list. So I might want to look here. I assume that Story's Path of Destiny is not the predecessor to Omen Sight, because if it was, they would have told me that, but certainly it looks like it might be. So I might need to do some research and just make sure both games are on that list. But what you can see from their developer page is that this is definitely not a definitive edition, with a regular edition still available for purchase. We could look here. Spiritual successor to the award-winning stories, The Path of Destinies. I think that game stories, The Path of Destinies, had some bad reviews originally, and so I could see there being a issue with it taking some time to finally get positive reviews, but now it's very positive. Alright, moving on to the next game. We have 1 Hour, 1 Life. There's a few of these games that came out, and I'm not 100% sure which game was the first in the series and whether it really even matters. This says it's a multiplayer survival game of parenting and civilization building. Get born to another player as your mother, live the entire life in 1 hour, have babies of your own to form other players, leave a legacy for the next generation as you help rebuild civilization from scratch. I believe there's a single player version of this game that probably would be better suited for me, and this is a very unique, but I wouldn't inherently say bad idea as far as an art style. It's pencil drawings basically, and you don't see that a lot. Sometimes it would make the game look terrible, but in this case I think it probably helps hide a lack of actual artistic ability or funding in buying art assets. This requires a third-party account, and it's only multiplayer though. So for me personally, this game has to be out. I don't play multiplayer games, and it would not make any sense. I also have a feeling that without a lot of support, people would just all die in very quick succession. If you really have to live 1 hour and make sure you have a child, unless that's a completely automated process, I would imagine there'd always be more people dying than having children, and you would need some players to probably have 2, 3, 4 children, just to allow for the player base to grow or even maintain itself. But yeah, regardless, this is a massive multiplayer game that came out November 8th, 2018. I doubt there's too many people playing it now. If we were to go over here and see what is getting recommended similar to this, I don't think we'll even run into the game I'm thinking of. Let's see. There's a lot of negative reviews for people who are activated by a key, so their reviews aren't being counted. People are not happy with some of the updates. The new update really ruins it. Few families, literally no odds to be able to Eve. I would assume Eve has something to do with having more children, or spontaneously having children. Yeah, 1 Hour, 1 Life though, not making it to the wish list. It probably didn't even know that it was a multiplayer only game, in all honesty. This is the first instance of me cleaning up the follow list, and so there are, I recognize several instances of games that now would no way meet my standards, and there are games here that just have no reason to be on this. And if we want to talk about another game that really doesn't meet my standards, this next game is One Person Story. I believe this is a one-button game where you just click buttons on your mouse to make the platforms appear or disappear, and this ball is just bouncing up, and it's trying to tell you a story of some sort as you're going up. But I imagine what you would find is this journey is a one-time journey, and that is it. I wouldn't also be surprised if this is like a 5-minute game. It has 9 user reviews, came out August 23rd. It did look sort of different and sort of unique, and I can see why I put it on the follow list. In a desperate attempt to find different types of games and new types of games, I was being certainly ambitious with things that I was giving a chance to. But even in this, it's had 6 months. It hasn't gotten 20 people to purchase it and review it. This has 100 levels. It says it's full English audio and full Russian audio. This is an example of an English-Russian game that might be a low-effort game when all is said and done. We could look at the negative reviews, but there aren't any. So there's a lot of positive reviews, but positive reviews kind of mean nothing to me. So in this case, because it doesn't have relevancy, even though it's 100% positive for the 9 user reviews, it's still not good enough for me to spend my time on. So yeah, it's not making it to the wish list either, which is not a surprising percentage so far. Seems like for every letter we do, we barely get 5, maybe 10 games out of 50 that meet the standard to actually make it to the wish list. Now, the wish list itself has at least 1,000 games on it already, so it's not like it needs a lot of new games added to it. And it really will eventually just boil down to how many new games come out on Steam in a year that are worth playing. And I suspect that number probably does range between somewhere around maybe 12 and 30 games per year. Here's the next game we're looking at here is One Piece World Seeker. I'm going to take a break and drink some water so you can just watch this crazy video. It's also worth pointing out, since we're looking at an anime game, that if we run into any adult games that I have to censor, I have a blur function that I'll use just to make sure everything's YouTube friendly before I show things off. So One Piece World Seeker. One Piece being, I think, still the longest running manga ever. I don't think anything's anywhere close to beating it, and I do think that they are slowly working towards ending the manga series. The writer is, but that's kind of fine since it's been going on for decades. You would think, though, with it being very well known, at least to Asian countries and Japan, being the longest running ever, it should be super popular. It should be pretty successful. I will say the concept of One Piece makes it a little bit harder to understand. Dragon Ball, in comparison, is pretty simple to understand. There are people, mostly aliens, that have the ability to fight in fantastic ways. In One Piece, there are people that eat a magical fruit and that gives them all unique and different abilities, and then lets them fight in different ways. The Gum Gum fruit, I believe. And you're following Luffy here as the main character, but he has a whole collection of friends / former enemies in his pirate ship as they're looking for the One Piece treasure that is a rumored treasure that probably doesn't even exist. So it's a little bit more complicated to even understand or get into it. The best you might take from this, if you were looking at just the video, is that it is probably slightly a Spider-Man style game. If with his stretching out arms, but it really is more of a open world fighting game than that. Sorry, I hit the microphone a second ago. The problem here is Bandai Namco kind of has a history of publishing games as promotions for their other properties, because I'm sure Bandai Namco also owns One Piece the anime and One Piece the manga in part, but they don't put a lot of polish on that. So this is a game that clearly needs to leave the fall list. You can see it's 57% positive. Nobody liked it. If we compare this to some other things Bandai Namco has released lately, let's just go through their list. One Piece World Seeker, mixed. Jump Force, which is a combination of Shonen Jump stories, which includes One Piece, is mixed. Ace Combat, mostly positive. Sword Art Online, mostly positive. Sword Art Online, Lost Song. 11 Memories of Retold, mostly positive, but nobody's heard about that one. My Hero 1's Justice, very positive. Soul Calibur 6, positive. But then you have New Gundam Breaker, mixed again. Naruto the Boruto Shippuden Strikers, mixed again. So it's a very off and on coin flip that you'll have. Pac-Man Championship Edition DX, extremely positive. Pac-Man 256, very positive. I'll tell you, Pac-Man Championship Edition DX2, not so well received. So, frankly, I guess it's kind of nice they do these experiments and try, but I wish they'd put some of these games back in the oven, as it were, and give them more time to bake. It seems like they just throw out, particularly anime-based games, a lot of the time. They just throw out to get as much money from the most of the rabid fans possible, and have a bad product for everybody else. That's not what you want to see. I kind of would like to see One Piece become more popular around the world. I'm not sure it ever would, but certainly this doesn't help it. So yeah, this is leaving the fall list. And frankly, I gave it too much consideration because it was based on an anime. Next game we have is called One Shift, a puzzle platformer where the players have the ability to freeze and unfreeze and shift through worlds, which looks like an interesting idea where you're able to jump and freeze time and then shift the cycle of where the placements are. Although, in all fairness, this looks very much like a one-screen Unity game, as I call them, where the screen never scrolls and it's just puzzle games of some sort in the same area. And these definitely look like very basic Unity assets here. This came out August 10th, 2018. It is 68% of 16 verified purchases, which tells me it's not really something that's worth covering. I can also pretty well tell it's not really worth covering when you have a very generic Unity asset robot, and then behind there you have a generic Unity asset anime girl, which that makes no sense. And looking at these screenshots, I see no character like that at all. This might have worked better as a mobile game and sold a little bit better, but probably not even then. Yeah, so it's kind of pointless to even come down here and read the negative reviews, because clearly it fails really on relevancy. It didn't have 20 reviews, and even at that, it's not positive. So One Shift is getting removed. Next we have Onimusha Warlords as a game. Thank goodness for the Japanese titled games are, we probably would barely have 10 games starting with O. That being said, like, I know T is going to be a super long list, and I know several of the other games are, so several of the other letters after O are going to be particularly long. I believe Onimusha Warlords is the remake of Onimusha, which was like a PlayStation 2 game. If it's the game I'm thinking about, you play as a Demon Slayer samurai, or a samurai turned Demon Slayer, who has a who runs through a village at these fixed camera angle perspectives, much like how the original Resident Evil 1 played, and you're killing these zombie-like creatures. Notice how the camera is changing, and every time the camera changes, you're forced to readjust the direction in which you're moving your controls. It's a pretty terrible control system, but this is a remaster, so I don't think that you can really do anything about it. This is kind of a beloved cult hit of a game, one that I definitely didn't play, but I would be willing to try. It's also very, very Japanese from the looks of it, and this is an interesting, well, that lady scene there that they just quickly showed is the one scene that was censored in the Western release slightly, or I think actually it was censored in the Japanese release and less censored than the Western release. So the woman turns into a giant bug in a boss fight. It's really grotesque for the time. And clearly was a memorable scene because they bothered to put it back in the game. $19.99. You can see this game is 92% positive. The remaster came out January 15, 2019. This is also one of a growing list of games that are getting re-released for PC, particularly Japanese games. You have to kind of applaud Capcom for putting in the risk in doing that. Let's see. Is there anything here that would really convince me not to put this on the wish list? I don't think so. Because you're going to take the good from the bad. So they're saying like the voice acting is bad. There's going to be complaints, certainly. Now, compared to like Devil May Cry 5, clearly you'd want to play that more. Or the Devil May Cry HD collection, which would be the remasters of the first 3 Devil May Cry games. Those have more relevancy. Although I would say Onimusha probably has more relevancy than X-Blades. Or Resident Evil 2 kind of is a different game, so I'd not really want to compare that. Or Berserk Band of the Hawk is a little less relevant. This is a niche product, and it deserves to be on the wish list. That being said, if I'm spending money specifically to buy games, it would be certainly a hard choice to purchase this game when you have things like Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which would be, I think, your best comparison. So, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, in comparison, came out March 21st, 2019. This is a hardcore game where you're fighting a bunch of monsters and doing basically the same concept, but there's a lot more polish and development that has been put in a game like this that came out really only a few months ago compared to a remaster of a game that came out many years ago, even though the remaster came out this year. So yeah, it'd be a very hard choice to say, hey, let's not buy Sekiro, let's buy Onimusha Warlords instead. Next game we have is a game called OOO Ascension. With a low effort name like that, this is probably a low effort game. It came out September 26, 2018. It has 3 user reviews, so it's not really relevant. I imagine there was something here I hoped for that would have made this like an interesting, unique game. The video's showing me some unique movements, but really all it is you're a vehicle driving on a curved sphere and avoiding some basic things to avoid. So this is a very basic looking game. I would love to see a Mario Galaxy style game, and this has perhaps a little bit of that concept of being a Mario Galaxy style game, but frankly, if you're going to make a Mario Galaxy clone, you're going to have to put a lot of effort into it. $9.99. We could look at the 3 positive or negative reviews. They seem to be all positive, but one was received for free, another was received for free, and the other says it was purchased through Steam. So yeah, this game lacks relevancy, and it lacks being particularly interesting. And this still really is just a one-screen Unity game. It's just implementing a little bit of 3D physics, which takes a little bit of programming, but not a lot. So yeah, OOO Ascension, probably a whole series of games from Extra Mile Studios. No, actually there's only one game called OOO. Interesting. So I guess maybe they were thinking they would make some more. I've seen a lot of low effort games do that, where they have a weird name that comes up again over and over again. Calling yourself something lowercase o, capital O, lowercase o doesn't really put you at the beginning of any list though. So if you were going to do this, you would have called yourself 000 Ascension. That would have made more sense if you're just looking to be at the beginning of a list. Yeah, there's nothing here. Moving on. Next we have a game called Optica. And man, does it really feel like we're scraping the bottom of the barrel on these games. Let's see. A mind-bending puzzle game of logic and illusion. Let's see. How does this play? Was that trailer really how a level plays, or was that trailer just an indication of something? Because what I'm seeing here seems to be that the light goes in and the light comes out regardless of sides. And it seems like there is very little or no connection between these lines on the outside. Again, this is probably just a single screen Unity game, or that's how I describe it. And just multiple color lights, but no prism to explain how that would work. This game desperately needs a tutorial second video to show how this is supposed to really play, because this does not do it. This does not make any sense at all. Like, well, this game came out November 8th, 2018. It has no relevancy. It has 3 reviews. It's $9.99. A game like this probably should be selling for $1.99. There's really nothing. There's really nothing here that would make this make it to the wish list. I was clearly far too generous with a lot of these simplistic puzzle games, because I do want to play puzzle games, but quite frankly, a lot of people on Steam take advantage of people's desire to play puzzle games and make very low effort ones that barely have 100 puzzles that are super easy or super hard, or they don't explain how the puzzles are supposed to work at all, or it's just misprogrammed in some other way, or misdesigned in some other way. Yeah, Opticon not making it to the wish list. Next we have a game called Origin of Decay, which is 80% positive of 10 user reviews, but it came out November 26, 2018, so it's really not following the relevancy standard here. This looks a lot like somebody is straight up stealing concepts, if not art assets, from Dead Island or Dying Light. Both Dead Island 1 and Dying Light are made by a company called Techland, although Dead Island as an intellectual property is owned by the publisher, which explains why there's been several Dead Island games that weren't as good as the first one. In the problem that's becoming more and more prevalent on Steam is you can make a game like this by mostly just asset flipping Unity assets, and it will look pretty good. This game does look pretty good, but I don't think there's anything to take from this. Like, even if this is a great zombie survival game, it doesn't matter. Also, it's in early access, which it's had more than 6 months to come out of early access, and it hasn't done that, so probably is never going to come out of early access. So we could look at the reviews. Let's see what the 2 negative reviews say. They're not even in my language, according to this, although maybe that's just a RAM issue. Meanwhile, if you wanted to play a zombie survival game, Dead Island 1 or just skipping straight to Dying Light would be your best bet. Frankly, yeah, just playing Dying Light is your best bet. You have a Japanese looking review and a Russian looking review. Odd, considering both it only supports English. That being said, yeah, there's no way this goes to the follow list. It just doesn't have relevancy. It's a zombie game, and even though in the past couple of years they have been doing a moderately good job of not making too many zombie games, there's still pretty much a dime a dozen as far as zombie games. World War Z came out recently. It's a pretty good zombie game, whereas several other zombie games have come out that I can't even remember the names of because they weren't memorable at all, and those are from AAA developers, well-known publishers and well-known developers. Next we have a game called Orphan. It says it's a 2D sci-fi platformer about a young boy who may be the last survivor of an alien invasion. This came out October 3rd, 2018, has 9 user reviews. From the video, this looks very much like a Limbo style game, a clone game where you're mostly running to the right and platforming and working your way towards an attempted escape. Now, Limbo was a very well received game when it came out, so it's understandable that there would be a few clone games out there, and that doesn't inherently mean that all the clone games are going to be bad. This really is going to come down to a case of, if the 9 user reviews, if 8 out of the 9 say they're positive, if 7 out of the 9 say they're positive, I might put this on the wish list as a comparison to Limbo, which is a game I've already played, or as a comparison to the sequel, or a spiritual sequel to Limbo called Inside. That being said, this is $14.99. That's asking quite a lot for its price. This isn't from a recognizable developer or publisher. This could be like an hour. Normally we don't look at how long they take to play a game, but here this person wrote a review after half an hour. This person wrote a review after 3.5 hours. This person wrote a review after 1 hour. Another strange thing where only the author can understand how to play it. Don't buy it unless you're dumb and like watching a kid's silhouette walk across the screen for 2 hours. Use cheat engine to fast forward all the walking and cutscenes and beat this trash game in under 30 minutes. Got a refund after, thanks. That's not a very helpful review because that's not a realistic or honest way to approach a game. Let's see. Here we have, I was a backer. This was a Kickstarter game. It's a one-man endeavor, although this person claims to be the translator for Portuguese and Brazilian. Noticeable quantity of bugs and glitches. So, the thing I would say is Playdead Studios, the studio that made Limbo, and that was several people making a piece of art to announce their studio and hopefully get enough funding to make another game. Whereas if you're just a one-man person who's kickstarting the development of a Limbo clone, you're not really doing anything artistic, and you're not really going to establish yourself as a great creator in the video game world. What you've established yourself as a person who couldn't think of his own ideas very much and just copied somebody else's ideas completely or very much. The only difference I can tell between Orphan and Limbo is the alien twist. And then when you look at this developer on Steam, they don't have anything else. When you look at this publisher on Steam, they haven't published anything else. More than likely, the developer and the publisher are both made-up companies that very possibly never filed any paperwork to be doing business under those names. And you run into a problem here of relevancy in a different way. And I know I'm using relevancy for a lot of reasons and excuses, but Limbo came out a while ago, so it's hardly on people's mind. Inside has had time to come out since then. Limbo came out August 2nd, 2011. It also had very sharp black and white and gray silhouettes, which made it scene for scene look a lot better than what I'm really seeing here, at least in this video. So from 2011 to October 30th, 2018, he had 7 years to make a clone. He made a clone. It was kickstarted enough to put it on Steam, but it wasn't popular enough to even get 20 people to purchase it and review it. That makes this game irrelevant. Even if it is good, even if it is a hidden gem, it's like, who cares? My little YouTube channel would certainly not be able to get this game in front of 1,000 more people's eyes. I wish my YouTube channel got that many views per video, but that's just not the case. So, yeah. Orphan kind of fails as a pretender. So many other games fail as pretenders. And we probably only have 2 more games to cover. We'll barely go an hour, that's frankly surprising we went this long. Next we have a game called Over Dungeon, and this is a card game. I always look out for new card games because I play Hearthstone every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hearthstone is pretty old. If I could find something that took less mental energy or less time to play, I would probably play that card game. That being said, I would have to also be very popular. This is kind of the catch-22, because sure, I could consider playing Magic Arena, but Magic Arena would take longer to on a game-by-game basis to play, or I could consider playing maybe one of the Yu-Gi-Oh games on Steam, but that would be less popular, and I don't think I want to go that route until, well, part of the problem is none of the Yu-Gi-Oh games on Steam are particularly good, There's a couple mobile ones that might be worth playing. The problem I'm seeing with Overdungeon is it seems to be more of a deck building game, and I'd be fine playing a deck building game just to show it off, but a deck building game is going to live and die on if it ever gets any updates or how varied the cards are originally. This says it has more than 100 cards. 100 cards really isn't that high. This is 56% positive. Also, there's this succubus character that is showing up, a vampire character, and if this game was going to embrace lewd waifus and anime girls as its concept, it would have to embrace that pretty hard, and I don't see that in the average gameplay. So I'm seeing a 56% positive in the last 30 days, where it's 83% positive over the lifetime. That tells me something significant has happened. This came out November 20th, 2018. It's still in early access. I would argue a card game should not be released in early access at all. That goes true for Artifact, the game made by Valve, as much as any other card game. But you should probably bring it out as a finalized product, because people know card games, particularly if they're collectible card games, are going to have expansions that come out. This game isn't tagged with any in-app purchases, so I assume if you paid the $14.99, you get all the cards that are available and possibly ever going to be available. It is still getting patched. It has 52 achievements, but it's probably just a little too late, and I'm not 100% sure how this game really works. It looks like it might be interesting, or it looks like it might just be a bit of a mess as far as a concept. Meanwhile, other card games like Slay the Spire have come out and are overwhelmingly positive, and other games somewhat similar to that. Let's see, Phantom Reese looks like it might be a card game with anime characters in it too. Phantom Rose. So let's look at the reviews. Update: the developer has apparently flagged my review as abusive. I have no idea what this means. I'm alarmed they apparently have at least some small ability to influence criticism. I didn't know you could do that on Steam either, so this might not be true, but it certainly is a bad ability for Valve to give to people, and certainly not a good look on the game developer. Honestly, if somebody puts a review on your game and it's nothing but just hate speech and garbage and memes, you maybe flag it then, but maybe you just leave it alone, because you don't want the Streisand effect. That's way worse. It always is worse. Ignoring this review, though, let's read this one. It's an interesting concept, but it ultimately feels very flat. And that aside from the fact that the mortars break the game, I found that out within 7 minutes of playing. The strategy involved otherwise feels centered around upgrades and big numbers than creativity. I feel the game is trying too hard. The restriction on playing your cards each turn just makes the game worse, in my opinion. It's a bad clone of Slay the Spire, even for an early access one. The game on the first try with just throwing chickens and spamming cards without any sense. Let's see. I love Slay the Spire. There's another negative review. It is, I suppose, worth mentioning that the reason why the #1 review here is up here is because 47 people who've read this review found it helpful. So people are taking what's being said here very much to be true, and that's getting this marked up higher, thumbs upping it basically, whereas these other reviews 47 people found this review helpful. 11 people found this review helpful. 6 people found that one helpful. 5, 4, and then 3, and 3, and 6, 4, 2. So by the time you get over into the side one, these aren't labeled as any of them being found helpful, but they're more recently posted, where this is the most helpful in the past 180 days. I don't see anything here that makes me want to put this in the wish list. It's not a finished game, so I wouldn't put it in the wish list anyways, but I also don't see a reason to let this stay on the fall list. It's been given it 6 months to come out with a final product, and it hasn't. Regardless of whether the creator flagged one review as abusive, maybe the review was maybe a little bit abusive, who cares? The overall tone here is bad for the last 30 days, and it's just bad on its own face. So that's getting left. Next we have a game called Overturn. I'm a little surprised we have this many games, but I guess maybe we'll run into 2 or 3 that start over. So this is tagged an action adventure VR shooter puzzle game. What I'm seeing in this video is a very glossy kind of, I don't know if you want to call that directly call that an anime girl. It's kind of that style, but then it's in 3D, so it kind of feels a little different too. Korean MOBA games often have that art style. Chinese MOBA games also look that way, so there might be a little bit of a difference there too. So it seems like a VR game where you're playing as that character, but like all VR games, because you're playing as that character, you're not going to be seeing that character very often. So maybe you're protecting or working with that character. That's not a terrible idea, to have a style of a side partner, co-op partner, AI follow quest style game. Most VR games involve you just sitting in one place or standing in one place and shooting at things. This seems like it's trying to do a pretty decent job about keeping that varied. As we're looking at the gameplay, and the art style looks pretty varied. Now, I almost certainly will never buy a VR headset. This is probably one of maybe 10 games that look good enough to convince me at some point that I might want to buy a VR headset, but I would kind of need to see 100 games in that category, not 10. The technology is getting better and better, but the quality of games and the amount of time you can really spend playing a game is not really going up by much. This is $29.99. That's a pretty average, I'm not going to say fair, but average price for a good VR game. So this is a game that I think deserves to stay on the follow list, because all VR games stay on the follow list, because I'm probably never going to buy a VR headset. That being said, if a game like this had a optional you can play this without VR function, instead of saying it requires a VR headset, I might buy this game and then know in the back of my head that someday, if I did get a VR headset, it would be playable. This game has more in the VR waifu department than anything else out there right now that isn't hentai, so I'll just acknowledge this before I slam into the game. Combat Goods seems like a good place to start. This guy's gonna go on forever reviewing this. The game gets really boring after the third level. Wait for a major price drop if you want to play this game. Could not find out what I was supposed to do in stage 3. Doesn't look as good as the trailer. So this might be a bit of a bait and switch game. I would want to do some consideration there. That being said, it is 82% positive, so mob rule tells me to ignore those negative reviews. It's very possible that it didn't look as good on somebody's headset because their headset was miscalibrated. So overturned stays on the follow list. Overturn. And the next game we have is called Owl Watch. This came out November 12th, 2018. It's 78% positive, 60 reviews, verified purchase reviews. This looks to me to be a platformer of some sort, but I don't know if it's particularly a good game in the form of a platformer, or if this is just kind of some Unity assets. If from the look of the video, like my mouse cursor is over here, so there is a mouse cursor that is being used to guide this guy in the video, and it would have been pretty easy to hide the mouse cursor so it looked like you were controlling it with a controller even if you weren't, just so it looked like a better project. And often you will see that on Steam as people making very terrible, sometimes Bandicam style recordings. This is 99 cents, so it may not really matter. 10 to 30 minutes of playtime. Not really sure I want to play 10 to 30 minutes of a game. I don't know if I want to get into a game for 99 cents and then be done with it. Like, yeah, I don't know if I have any love in my heart for super short games, even if they are on sale. That's a hard question. And when you look at the video, I guess if 10 to 30 minutes of this is what we're seeing, we're probably seeing the entirety of the game. It really does seem like maybe this was a student project or a unfinished design, like a vertical slice of a game instead of an actual game. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that could be interesting. Now, I don't know if this is RAM, and that's why none of the negative reviews are loading up, or if actually all 19 of these reviews are not in English. And I guess it probably doesn't matter. We could sit here and wait for it to load, but yeah, I think I've already made my decision. Yeah. Boring collectathon with isometric view and crappy platforming. A lot of these negative reviews. 10 minutes of uninteresting content, pretty though. So yeah, that's a RAM issue. Some of these negative reviews are definitely in English, but did not load up. Yeah, I am seeing the thing I thought I would see. So Owl Watch is leaving the follow list. Clearly this is an example of me seeing something that is slightly pretty and that catching my attention enough to put it on the follow list. But when you have some reviews, when you evaluate it a little bit more critically, you realize, oh yeah, for a video game, it's not much of a video game. You don't kind of have that problem if you're just watching TV or movies. Like, all it has to do is sound relatively decent and look good and have a mildly interesting story. But games have to also play right and be a smooth experience and a fun experience. Alright, next we have a game called Oxygen Not Included. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last, since this is OX. Oxygen Not Included is not the sequel to 60 Seconds. that is called 60 parsecs. But this kind of reminds me of that game. I covered the game 60 seconds and paid too much for it and was very disappointed in the gameplay I had there. That has nothing to do with Oxygen Not Included. Oxygen Not Included apparently is a space colony simulation game, and you can see there's a lot of animation here, but I'd like to see the actual gameplay. There was a game called Soup Co. that I covered and quickly rage quit because I found it annoying, and this might be from the same developer that made that game. This is the real game. You're on a planet, you're digging for resources, you're building out your base, and you're making a sim, for lack of a better term. Kind of like Fallout Shelter, would be, I guess, a fair example. But yeah, as these screenshots don't want to load in, there's a lot of videos here. I think Steam probably let too many videos be put on games, but Steam has that very libertarian attitude, saying, well, who are we to tell you how to sell your own product? So if you want to put 10 videos on our page, they'll probably let you. I've heard of Clay Entertainment, most known, I think, from Don't Starve. This is still early access. It's discounted right now to $18.74. It's English, simplified Chinese, Korean, and Russian. Now, I don't think that inherently means it's a low effort game, but the fact that it's early access and it came out in 2017 tells me that this almost certainly is abandonware at this point. And you really wouldn't want to hear that from Clay, or about Clay, because Clay Entertainment recently released Mark of the Ninja Remastered, which I covered Mark of the Ninja, and I believe they gave me the remaster for free, so I have to be happy about that. And Invisible Ink was not that well received, but Crypt of the Necrodancer was overwhelmingly positive received, and they are doing Cadence of Hyrule as a Crypt of the Necrodancer Legend of Zelda tie-in game on the Switch right now, so I wouldn't be surprised if that is why Oxygen Not Included is not finished and out, is because they got busy working with Nintendo. Eats Munchies, I've never heard of that. They made Shank and Shank 2. I've covered Shank 1 on my channel. I don't think I own Shank 2 right now, but I plan on getting it and covering it pretty soon. So Clay is kind of all over the place as far as different small kind of unique games. They start off with Shank, which is a beat 'em up series, and then they make a puzzle platforming game that not too many people are interested in. Then they make a highly successful rhythm roguelike game. Then they make an XCOM style turn-based strategy game, and then they made Don't Starve together, which there's a lot of spin-offs and side Don't Starve games, but apparently they're not all getting published by Clay, or they've taken the older versions off from sale, and Don't Starve Together is the only version they sell now. But yeah, Oxygen Not Included, I have to just label it as an abandoned project. I have not heard anybody mention it in the 2 years since it's come out, really, or at least in the last year or so. So this is leaving the follow list. We don't need to follow it all the way to the grave. And that was the last game that we starting with the letter O. We really didn't cover that many games. It took us about an hour to go through them, and I ended up with just Omen Sight Definitive Edition and Onimusha Warlords making it to the wish list, everything else leaving the fall list. This is a great indication, however, because what this means is that very possibly 6 months or a year from now, when I need to do the next fall list cleanup, there might not be that many games to cover. It might take me, instead of 26 plus hours to cover all the games, it might take me only 5 hours, and that would be certainly helpful for everybody, quite frankly. A more efficient use of time. Anyways, that's it for this recording. Next time we'll cover games starting with the letter P. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. That helps me with YouTube and tells them that my videos are worth watching. When you subscribe, click the notification bell and then click the pull down to make sure you get all notifications if you want notifications. That's true for any YouTube channel you subscribe for. If you want backup notifications, there's a bunch of social media sites down below in the description you can friend and follow me on. And if you would be so kind, you could support me down below through the link via Patreon, or the whole reason we're doing all of this, you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list, or you could gift me a gift card or just a game you'd like to see me cover. Yeah, don't forget Steam sales are always around the corner, so there's a good time to get that. Game's cheap. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.